Just do it. Okay. Today, I have a very special guest today. For those who might not know who you are, what you do.
Ah, R and Raw. I'm just this guy, you know.
So, so you are big into we saw it's been a while, but you have do a lot of biology work and classifications on the or you help yourself with it.
Yeah, for whatever reason, you seem to be chopping out a little bit, and I'm
Oh,
not able to hear the whole question.
sorry.
But yeah, you asked me about taxonomy projects. I think you said
Yeah, can you hear me now?
yes, much
Okay.
better. So, what was the question?
Yeah, so you're into evolution biology and uh, grouping biology projects, which you used to
Yeah,
be.
for whatever reason, I have an interest that very few other people share. In that, I like how I like the classification of life forms. For me, I don't know what it is for other people when they study evolution. Maybe they're looking at something changing. I'm not so much. I look at a tree of life, and so I see uh, where you have a mammal lineage, make a distinction, and then they further specify into what type of mammals they are. Laurasiatherians, and then what's subset of Laurasiatherians, carnivorans or whatever,
Yeah,
and they keep getting more and more specific.
yeah.
And so I don't see ever where evolution has one thing changing into another fundamentally different thing. That never happens. And so the people who take that perspective are, I think, trying not to understand what they're afraid to believe.
So are you getting tired of that catchphrase, like
Oh
creation
yeah,
is
because
kind of
it's it's one of the most annoying lies that creationists tell because it's a deliberate misrepresentation. And I guess from their perspective, they're imagining a fish turning into an amphibian, turning into a lizard, turning into a monkey, turning into a man, something like that. Maybe that's how they're picturing it. And it reminds me of that. There was a parody of that sort of thing on South Park.
yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, but I'm seeing it very differently. As I said, I'm seeing it as vertebrates. You never stop being a vertebrate, and when they reach the Crossopterygian or Osteichthyes, all these different subgroups, they're just becoming more specific of the original group that they were.
Yeah,
And yeah,
yeah. Of course, once you get the singular cell items, it gets a little bit more blurry. I think
well, not
maybe like are we?
necessarily. I
I know
mean,
we're yeah. I know we're still. I know we're still eukaryotes, but are we also archaea?
no, no. Archaea, there's the family tree divides into three main
Yeah.
forks right away. Well, you could call it two, but Archaea is kind of between eukarya
Okay.
and bacteria.
Okay.
So
I was wondering what the if the what the official thing is because I heard some people say that eukarya is like a sister brand to archaea. Others say it's within archaea.
oh no, it's not within. It's a sister group, and the way one of the other things that's commonly misrepresented is a bacteria turning into
Oh
something
yeah.
else. And archaea technically are not bacteria; they're something different. But even then, the way that you make this transition from archaea into eukarya is technically not evolution,
Okay.
because evolution is an ancestor descendant relationship. It's descent with inherent modification. But with these, we're talking about changes through endosymbiosis, and there's a lot of horizontal gene transfer because we're talking about unicellular microbes. So there is no ancestor descendant.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very different kind of conglomeration. Now, once you get into eukaryotes, now we have a functioning tree of life that is more or less consistent.
Yeah. Yeah. I watched your 50 episode thing, which is really like more like technically like 75 or 80 parts. You know, only 50 episodes.
Oh, the systematic classification of life.
Yeah.
Yes, my favorite project that I've ever done. I wish I'd had a better handle when I started that, how much I was going to love it at the end, because this was my wife's idea, and I didn't really see the genius of it when I started. And then I realized several episodes into it, I realized that, you know what? Nobody's ever done this. No one has ever done this kind of a classification to show, a cladistic, monophyletic classification system to show all of the diagnostic characteristics for why we are in each of these groups.
Yeah,
That was unique, and it gave me a great opportunity to show elements of paleohistory and all kinds of evidence for evolution at different stages. And one of the things that I really like about the history of evolution is the study of it, the history of the scientists and the backgrounds that they came from, the misconceptions that they had, the controversies that they were arguing over at one point. All of that to me is fascinating.
yeah.
The
So,
way people would come out of the dark with a completely wrong idea, and the way that they would argue about this before somebody finally comes up and said, no, 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 it's like this, and then everybody goes, oh, damn, that works. Okay.
yeah. So, do you know if Linnaeus was the first person to do that, or somebody before him? They don't get any credit.
Well, Linnaeus is almost the dawn of the fascination of the history of evolutionary studies. He was himself a younger, he was a creationist. I don't know about young Earth, but he was a creationist. He believed that new species could only come about as a special act of creation by God. But what was interesting about that was when he tried to classify all life forms, the first thing he noted was that they don't fall into groups of created kinds, that they fall into an ancestral hierarchy, like a family tree. And he did one family tree for plants because he was a botanist, and then he got curious about it and started classifying animals too. And he had two trees that he didn't realize were connected, because there's no way in 1735 that he could have seen the connection there.
He
But
probably didn't know that. I think he thought that fungus was part of the plant tree at the time.
yeah, he did. Yeah, yeah. So fungi were considered plants, and Huygens, was it Huygens? No, Leeuwenhoek. When he devised microscopes and he started realizing that there's these microscopic life forms, they classified all of that as single-celled animals. Well, now the definition, you can't have a single-celled animal. Animals are multicellular by definition.
Yeah.
But they started coming up with protists, and at one point the bacterial category was called Monera. And it's interesting going through the history of
Yeah.
how they were figuring out and correcting their own mistakes as
Yeah.
they go.
Yeah. I remember way back in the ancient days of the 1990s when I was in school. I learned about they taught us about the five kingdoms: Monaria, Protista, fungus, animals, and plants.
How long ago was that?
Like I graduated in '98. They were still teaching that.
98. They were still teaching that.
Yeah.
I'm impressed because I remember in 92, I think it was, I was taking a course on evolution, and I remember that they were telling us that the classification system is all wrong.
Yeah.
They said that bacteria is a kingdom, and or that they were talking about doing domains. They were talking about the construct of domains,
Well,
so that bacteria wouldn't be a kingdom; it would be something bigger than that.
yeah.
And they said kingdom protista, which they were still observing in 1992. They said that this is wrong too.
Yeah.
Protista is probably more like 12 separate kingdoms on its own. That's what they
Yeah.
were saying in 92.
Yeah. Maybe it hadn't gotten down to the element at the middle school or high school level at that point. I guess.
It takes some time. I've noticed, like here in Texas, when everybody else got the memo. I mean, everybody else was showing that chimpanzees and humans were classified together, as hominids. The great apes are the hominids.
Yeah.
And there was a guy in a community college who was teaching anthropology. So I'm surprised to say, who was still teaching the old concept of hominid, which is hominid was synonymous with ape, and so hominid was something separate from people. And I had to show him the new construct that no, that genetic evidence has come forth to confirm that we are great apes. So they've reclassified all of this. Hominid no longer means half human, half ape. This means just all of the great apes, and that includes humans.
Yeah, just like the vertebrates I know there's still now that they were fish, amphibian, reptile, bird, mammal, all on the same level.
Yeah, yeah, like that. So it's fun. I'm interested in. I'm an old guy. I'll be 62 in a couple weeks.
Well,
And I remember when I was a kid, all of these classifications kept changing. That because, as I said, when they had Kingdom Onera when I was a little kid, and then they realized how that was wrong. And then I remember when they discovered archaea. Isn't it amazing that bacteria is this massive group, bigger than everything else? And Leeuwenhoek was the first one to ever see one, to know that these things exist at all, and it's the biggest group. And then archaea wasn't discovered until the 1970s. And I remember being a little kid when they talk about these extremophiles. They're like bacteria, but significantly different. We're going to have to put them in a whole different category by themselves. And oh, by the way, they're genetically more similar to eukaryotes than they are to bacteria. So,
yeah. So how long did it take them to realize their original 7 or 8 level was like good?
yeah, that's probably the funniest for me. Do we have a live chat going on? Do we?
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I'm seeing. All right, so yeah, Linnaeus comes up with these 7 categories because he's got such limited resources, and I want to talk shit about him because he came from the religious Euro ethnocentric position that he came. He was extremely racist. It was just a matter of course for these people. He classified 6 species of human, and you're going to love to hear this one.
I've seen the memes.
Yeah, so I mean, European white people, African black people, American red people, Asian yellow people, chimpanzees, and orangutans. Because he thought chimpanzees and orangutans were both human. He classified them as subspecies of human.
Was this before Australia was discovered too?
Australia was discovered. I couldn't tell you when Australia.
Okay.
I want to say that they certainly knew about Australia before then, but I can't speak to what Linnaeus knew about Australia. I know that he wasn't aware of gorillas. How would he have classified them? So yeah, he had very limited information, and so he's at the forefront of this huge thing that he can't even grasp. And it takes he comes across this mystery that he can't work out, and it's 100 years later when Darwin comes up with the answer to that enigma, which again I think is interesting.
Yeah. So, is there a difference between a phylogenetic tree and a cladogram, or are they basically the same thing?
There used to be some details in how they're depicted.
Okay.
And I've seen dendrogram and cladogram kind of used alternately or interchangeably, and it just I don't remember. This is going to be so embarrassing. I can't remember what the specifics were to distinguish the two. But you have the traditional taxonomy, and there was some people that were going to want to drop taxonomy altogether as a term. They were going to put that the Linnaean ranking system was going to be taxonomy, and then we were going to have phylogenetics, which is a different thing. But taxonomy, those old Linnaean ranks are helpful as signposts to keep you from getting lost in what would otherwise just be a sea of clades. So. So we still integrate. So we still call it taxonomy, but if it's phylogenetic, that means that it's twin nested. The old Linnaean taxonomy was nested in it was nested only in morphology, and phylogenetics means it's incorporated the genome. So it's a twin nested hierarchy now, so that we can analyze the morphology of something, and then we can say pretty confidently that it belongs here. But then when we can, every time we can, unless we're dealing with something only fossil evidence, we don't have DNA. If we have DNA for it at all, then we can check that out, and now we've got a twin nest. Now it's
Yeah.
based in the molecular phylogeny as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember reading about how some of what we thought in the taxonomy had changed once we got the molecular evidence, DNA evidence. Some of that stuff has switched around a little bit.
Yeah, I remember some of the specifics of it. Like once upon a time, there was some argument that microbats and megabats were separate groups, that they weren't, that they were only convergent.
Like megabats were more closely to primates, I think.
Yes, that the megabats were more like primates, and the microbats were like insectivorous, and they just coincidentally developed wings at the same time. But then when we got the genome back, no, they're a monophyletic group. Bats are bats, so they're all the same family, whether they're micro or macro. And then there was another classification that was based entirely on the absence of teeth in a handful of animals that eat ants. So the pangolins, toothless and eat ants. The anteater, of course, in South America, Xenarthran, toothless, eats ants. And then the aardvark and in Africa. And these were all classified in the same group. And then it was realized later that, again, with the genome, the aardvark is actually more closely related to elephants than it is to anteaters. And curiously, this one's a bit of a mystery, pangolins are more closely related to carnivorans than to either the anteater or the anteaters and Xenarthran. That's the South American group. The aardvark is Afrotherian, so that's the African group. And I'm trying to remember what the parent category is for both of them, but that's a completely separate parent category than the Laurasiatherians, where the pangolins.
But starts with a B, or starts with a B.
Yeah, but I can't remember. Boreoeutherians? No, that's us. Atlantogenodons. So Xenarthrans and Afrotherians are both Atlantogenodons. Wholly separate group. They separated long before. So it was just coincidental that these animals lost teeth and could only eat ants with elongated tongues. And it was just superficial that they were classified together like that. Then the genome comes back. And it's one of the things I like about the phylogenetics. And when you have the genome, it confirms what you got right or wrong. And so when we do genetic studies on apes, for example, what had happened with Linnaeus was he said that he challenged the scientific community of his day to show him a diagnostic difference between humans and apes, because he couldn't find one. He said, they're the same fucking thing. I can't tell them apart. And so what they did, the answer to that was that they arbitrarily created a all of the apes except for humans category, and they called that Pongo.
Which is now just the orangutans.
So yeah, when I was a kid, Pongo was a thing. You had Homo, that's humans, and you had Pongo, that's apes, and there's nothing in between them. And so looking for an ape man when that was your construct, well, maybe that made sense then. But now that we realize that humans are apes, just like we realize that birds are dinosaurs.
Yeah.
Just a subset of them.
Yeah, I love it when they say like Lucy was just an ape. You're like, yeah, she sure was, and so are we.
Yeah, so one of my favorite arguments now that I used to hear a lot of when I was a kid, if we evolved from apes, then why are there still apes? And my answer to that is, if we didn't evolve from apes, then why are we still apes?
Yeah, I made a similar joke about that. Like, imagine if in a million, 100,000 years or so, there's still creationists around. I know bad thought, but imagine if we got on Mars and they're still there, and they would say, if we came from Earthlings, why are there still Earthlings?
Yeah, I actually helped somebody deconvert when she asked me that very question about but why are there still apes? And I said, well, You understand that all domestic dogs are derived from wolves, right? Yes. Why are there still wolves? And she says, that's completely different. And I'm like, no, that is exactly the same. That's not even an analogy. That is the thing, straight up.
Yeah, it's like when your favorite ex-jailbird says dogs only produce dogs.
Yeah. This is why I consider this the worst lie that creationists tell. It's misrepresentation of evolution meaning one thing turning into or giving birth to another fundamentally different thing. Just never, no. It's not that at all. So that whole dogs produce dogs, that's all I've ever seen. Yeah. Yeah, because that's how evolution works.
Yeah, I thought when he said, uh, I forget what it was, but he said farmers rely on corn producing only corn. Like, no, they rely on evolution. That's how artificial selection came about. You know, they rely on it changing into something that wasn't. Not you know, I'm trying to say, like, because old corn is like this big, and then they are selected it to make it better.
It frustrates me when he gives an adequate description of evolution or aspects thereof, like natural selection and that, and then he denies that it is evolution. Like, no, yeah, that's exactly what that is. You know,
Yeah.
and I have this problem when I'm talking to creationists, getting them to understand what evolution is, because a lot of them say that they accept micro but reject macro, and in fact they get it backwards because they accept that speciation happens. They don't understand that speciation is part of the macroevolution category. But what they deny is the random mutations, the accumulation of random mutations, that these traits, the phenotypic traits are coming from a genotypic source, right? So they just refuse to. So what they're actually rejecting is microevolution. So I try to, when I'm trying to argue with a creationist, I try to get them on board. What is the microevolution? We have to understand that first. Don't just tell me you accept micro and reject macro because you don't know what either word means. So let's get into it.
So living in, I've seen your other issue. I've seen your other series about Texas school boards. So you live near a lot of creationists in your area.
Yeah, I am just wholly surrounded. I gave testimony to the Texas State Board of Education a week or two ago, and that was frustrating to see people who are in charge of public education declare that the Bible is an infallible history book.
Yeah, I thought my area was safe, but not, because I live about an hour north of the fake boat.
An hour north of the what?
Fake boat, the Ark encounter.
Oh, so you're in Ohio, I
Yeah.
guess? Gotcha. Yeah. Yeah, I'm embarrassed that I saw that thing. I was surprised, though, that the artistic renderings for the animals that they have inside, some of them are quite well done.
Yeah,
However, I asked for an opportunity to get good photographs of some of the animals they depicted, but they refused because they were going to, those photographs I was going to take would have been applied to, you know, actual scientific endeavors, and they didn't want anything to do with real science.
we can just get them from a toy store since they're stuffed anyways.
Well, I did think that they did a pretty good job in rendering some of these. It's funny to me that one of the things that they have on the ark is a mesohippus. So they have three-toed horses, and you're going to accept that all modern horses are derived from mesohippus. So vestigial traits. Mesohippus doesn't walk on three toes. It has three toes, but it walks on the middle one. And so what we end up with is you have toes that clearly used to connect to the ground. They used to be used for walking and running for traction and support, but then they become vestiges of what they once were. And modern horses still have, if you analyze the bone in the femur, they still have separate bones that are integrated into the main bone. Those are the side fingers. Of course, you have to understand your osteology to recognize that, but it's there.
Yeah, I thought it was funny when it well back at first they like list the living animals now, but now they're selling all the extinct animals too on the ark. Like not just the ones that lived, the dinosaurs, everything else was there too. Apparently, it's even
Yeah, that's a laughable thing, and the excuses that they use. The impression that I got when I went to go visit the Ark, when I'm talking to some of these people, there was some things that they said to me. One of them told me that I keep them on their toes. What does that mean? Well, when I refute their excuses, they have to come up with new excuses.
really every time I stopped watching debates of this subject because most of the time I watch debates, the Christian side had the same talking points every time for the most part.
The thing that surprises me is I think that a lot of us will tend to think that other people think like we do, and that's why thieves are so paranoid about locking their doors. More so than some of the rest of us. If you're more natural and or you're more honest, more trusting, maybe you're not so suspicious of everybody as somebody who should be suspicious of is going to be suspicious of everyone else. At least this is the way I look at it. So I have this obligation that if you show me that a thing that I believed or that I said is factually false, that it's not true, I am honor bound to stop saying that. I can no longer hold that position now that it has been shown to be false. And it doesn't even have to be shown to be false. If you show that it's not supported, I have to give it up.
Yeah, I do have a question about. I heard this phrase before. What does that mean when something is falsifiable?
There has to be a way to prove it wrong if it is. So you have a claim, and maybe it's a true claim. Maybe it's completely true. But whatever the claim that you make is, there has to be a way to, okay, well, if you were wrong, how would we know that this is wrong? And then we can go find out. So like with evolution, one of the examples that I bring up is our mythology is all full of chimera, where we like take pieces of one animal and staple it onto another animal, right? And so like the flying monkeys in the Wizard of Oz, or Pegasus from Greek mythology. In both cases, these are mammals that have a sixth pair, or have a third pair of limbs, and that third pair of limbs are dinosaur wings complete with feathers. So we have a horse with feathery wings, monkeys with feathery wings. There's two reasons. One, mammals are all going to be tetrapods, not hexapods. And two, there's no way evolution could produce an avian feather in a mammal.
Yeah, like we know that at least the three deuterostome flyers all were mutated, not mutated, I would say mutated, but converted front arms became the wings, like the pterosaurs, the dinosaur birds, and the bats.
Yeah, the birds, bats, pterosaurs, and I don't know why I thought there was something else. No, there's not.
The other one is on the the protostome side, where the insects have completely different wing evolution.
Gotcha. When you said deuterostome, that threw me off because I'm like, he's talking about vertebrates, surely. But yeah, I get your distinction now. Yes, the other flyers are the protostomes.
Yeah, they got the luck. I'll say lucky, but they didn't convert their front legs. They got a whole new set of things.
Another interesting thing about that is you think lucky. Okay, they can fly. Yeah. That's a great thing. Yeah, you can fly. Sure. But people don't realize when you specialize to have this super ability, the superpower, it costs you the advantage of being generalized, because we can do we're maybe a jack of all trades, master of none, but we can do everything. We're not really great at anything, but we can do everything. And dolphins swim better than us, and eagles fly, and all of that, but they can't do all of the things that we can do.
True.
Yeah. Raccoons and red pandas, they can do all this stuff.
I forgot my train of thought. But so when you're making your series or other on your other and your old website, were you surprised, at least in the probably more on at least in the human side, how many different stops there were?
How many different stops they were?
Yeah, like from eukaryote to Homo to sapien.
Oh, well, I was talking about named clades.
Oh yeah,
So most of the clades that we've identified are not named. So I mean, there's when we can, the genome will show that there are, a handful of separations or deviations between these two groups, and so far we only have names for the two,
yeah,
not for all six or whatever they are.
yeah. Like when before I watched your series, I knew of synapsids, therapsids, cytodonts, and mammals. I had no idea they're like the 20 or 30 besides of those, but just those two.
Yeah, yeah. The division or the evolution of mammals from the earliest synapsids, quite impressive. And when the creationists say that we don't have any transitional species, I'm like, you're clearly not looking. So let's just go look in that lineage alone. And when they tell me that everything it was caused by the flood, I've only been on like 3 paleo expeditions, and I would have loved to take a creationist with me to all 3 of them. This one is Cretaceous. This one is Eocene. This one is Permian. Good luck finding a dinosaur in the Permian. You're not going to find a mammal either. Here we are in the Eocene. You're not going to find any dinosaurs here either. Look all you want. They ain't here.
Oh, I love their first. First it was, I don't know. First it was hydro sorting, and then it was like how did the butterflies be higher than the pterodactyls, and how did the whales be higher than the other sea animals, but they're higher than the pterodactyls, and how.
Think about this now. I like the taxonomy because I want to know where I am and what I am. So I know people, I've met people who cannot tell me what state or country lies over the nearest border to the north, to the west, to the east, to the south. They can't. I know people that have lived in Texas their whole life and they've never been out of Texas. I met a man who was 40 years old who had never been out of Bexar County, which is where San Antonio is. Can you imagine being 40 years old? You've never been, never, ever, not even a weekend for excursion. He's never been out of the county? The fuck is wrong with that guy? But these are people that can't tell you whether the television came before the radio or the automobile, right? Who have no, they don't understand where they are in history. So, like when Trump made that comment about in the Revolutionary War that the rebels secured the airports. So Trump thought there were airports in 1776.
I don't know if that's true or not. I think I knew something.
I saw him say that. So, but the point that I'm trying to make is that there are people who don't know, who are fine with not knowing where the fuck they are, either in history or geographically, chronologically, or biologically. I want to know where the fuck I am.
Well, they think we consider Darwin like Jesus or Moses, whatever. Like they quote him more than we do, I think.
There is a very strong difference in the way that the creationist is thinking and the way that we're thinking. And when we talk about what's important to both of us, it seems that we're talking right past each other, because they want there to be meaning and purpose to their lives, which to me is just stupid. There's no reason to even ponder what is the meaning of life. It's a ridiculous question.
Yeah, I also think I said before that them trying to make everything black and white, like you're either a Christian creationist or an atheist evolutionist.
Yeah, that's
I think they
that's
lose.
that's a reflection, I think, of the intellect, because when people of low intellect, and I don't mean to generalize all creationists this way, but
Yeah,
I mean this is true. People of low intellect don't see a lot of nuance and extenuating circumstances. They put everything into two categories. The lower your intellect is, the more dichotomous it's going to be, the more binary it will
yeah,
be.
yeah. I
Good or
think they.
bad, black or white.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think doing that they lose more Christians than they try to gain. Like they're like, if I have to believe this stuff, then I'll not.
I am happy that I have met a bunch of Christians. Some of them are accomplished, respected scientists, some of them senators and so forth, who understand science. They understand the value and importance of secularism. They understand human rights as a necessity. They don't let belief in the Bible pervert or distort their understanding of reality. Now, there is some compartmentalization. The people that I respect the most among Christianity, I'm still going to have issues with. Do you believe X? Do you believe Y? And why do you believe either of these things? Because they're not support. At some point, they're going to have to say, okay, well, I just this makes me happy to believe this.
Yeah.
But when my issue is with the fundamentalists who will knowingly lie to defend their faith,
Yeah.
because they have to have the Bible be true even when they know already that
Yeah.
it isn't.
Yeah, when I was still a believer, when it always confused me. I'm like how can the flood have happened 4,000 years ago if we know that Native Americans had crossed the land bridge at least 10,000 years ago? That
You
just
think Sargon would have noticed that? Sargon is building his fucking empire. How does he build an empire if 8 people just got off the boat? Sargon was not passenger number 9. But when the young Earth creationists give their date for the end of the flood, that's the beginning of Sargon's empire. How did those people not notice that everybody had drowned the year before?
you see
But
the
we're not
problem.
talking about people who care about reason. We're not talking about people who care about truth. We're talking about people who think that the ends justify the means, and that it is okay to lie to students if you can get them to believe what you want them to believe, because then they'll vote the way you want them to.
You see, I found out they just got the date wrong. It's not 4,000 years ago. The real flood was 600 million years ago. It was not water as more as it was snow and ice, as snowball Earth.
The first of these arguments that I remember having was when somebody told me that Noah kept embryos, cryogenic embryos for all these animals on board his ark. So in the Bronze Age, or the Stone Age, actually, we have the 600-year-old man who has glass vials with frozen embryos. And how is he going to gestate these embryos when he comes off the ark?
With the now sea salted layer of Earth.
What are you going to do with the embryo? You kind of have to put the embryo in something to be a surrogate mother, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, but these people, they're desperate to believe something because they have to. When you don't understand anything, it seems that it makes it easier when you pretend that you understand better than all of the experts, that you're one of the elite, the select few who knows the real truth, the untold truth.
Yeah. Yeah. I see. Like, oh, guys, what's my train of thought again? Like, I'll think of it later. So yeah, I look at how we know that we're like more related. I like to people when we tell them chimpanzees are more close related to us than either one of us are gorillas, and or, they think all the group the same, but like no, we're more related to them. Just like fish or not, that's a bad term. Like tuna or goldfish is more related to us than they are the sharks, or fungus are more related to us than they are the plants.
Yeah. And you would think that people would be able to see. When I was in second grade, and somebody showed me a cladogram. I remember thinking, well, of course, all of this makes total sense. And I realized that there were people that were adults in my life who could not see, who couldn't play the Sesame Street game. One of these things is not like the other, right? You do what Kent Hovind does. Kent Hovind will take a seal and a bear and tell you, this is a seal, this is a bear. He's only got two. If you only got two, you can always find the difference between them. You can have two people of the same ethnicity and still be able to tell them apart. So that's an easy game to play. But what happens when you get three? Now you've got two that are closer than another one. And so what I noticed when I was in second grade was that there were adults that I knew and respected, people in my family and so forth, who could not tell that a goat and a sheep are closer to each other than either one is to a cow, a bovid. How do you not notice that? And put the three together. Put all of these bovini, whatever, and compare them to a giraffe or to a deer. One of these things is not like the other, right? Just a Sesame Street game, and it's that easy. But people can't see it.
Because a 5-year-old can tell a difference, as he said.
What makes it the same kind? Ask an ignorant 5-year-old.
I don't know. I don't know. I think I know a 5-year-old that's probably smarter than he is. But,
all right.
So is that, sorry, is that how your what's it called, the phylogeny challenge came about?
The phylogeny challenge is that creationists have come to terms with the fact that some degree of evolution exists. You can't deny all these different, 200 different breeds of dogs recommended or recognized by the American Kennel Club, all these different breeds of cattle and so forth, and then different species as well of dogs. So we have different species of foxes that cannot interbreed. They're all foxes. Any 5-year-old can tell you they're all foxes, but they can't interbreed, can they? Because they're different species of fox. There's red fox and there's silver fox, and there's the maned wolf, which isn't a wolf at all. It's more of a fox. It's like what happens when you try to make a wolf out of a fox. And so they realize that there's some level of evolution that they have to admit is real, except for Mr. Intelligent Design. I got into a debate with Mr. Intelligent Design a week or two ago, and he wouldn't admit any kind of evolution at all. So far as he's concerned, dachshunds and basset hounds and bloodhounds were specially created separately by God.
So, like, is that like
that idiot won't accept any level of evolution at all.
So, is that like back in what Owen's time, where he thought every few hundred years God hit the reset button?
Yeah. The new model year is coming out to replace the old ones, because Sir Richard Owens was under the impression that dinosaurs wore out, that God was a tinkerer who learned from his mistakes and kept coming up with new and improved products.
Well, as dumb as he was, well, I'm not going to say dumb, but at least he knew that the Earth was older than 6,000 years.
Yeah, an interesting thing about that was that Richard Owen was the foremost authority in the world at that time. If anybody tried to argue with him, he would just win based on him knowing more than anyone else. But that was the problem. He knew that the world was ancient. He didn't know how old it was, but he knew that there were ages before there were people, because he was the foremost authority in teaching that. And it's a little creepy that he lied so much as he did. That he was on top of he was the world's most respected authority, and he fucked up his own legacy by constantly lying and trying to denigrate other people. He could have just sat on the laurels of being the foremost expert. He would have had Darwin's, endless respect and everyone else's, right? Had he just not tried to contest everybody with all of his little petty bigotries.
Yeah.
And Owen had a lot of petty bigotry. When I was a little kid and I first read about Richard Owen, I read that he was a respected scientist. As an adult, I started finding out the things that he did and said about other people to denigrate them, to tear them apart, and to dehumanize and humiliate and overpower them. And then the way that the Royal Society ultimately drummed him out because his reputation for being just a sick prick had become so bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. One thing I was like, I think not their fault because they didn't know that much, but he named it. But I think it's all these things that are named sauruses that aren't really lizards. I think that's kind of weird or ironic or funny.
Richard Owen wanted everyone to think that dinosaurs were big lizards. He wanted them to think that they were cold-blooded, lethargic, slow-moving, dim-witted animals because he had the idea that warm blood somehow means loving parental care, and cold blood means ruthless, apathetic beasts. And so when the evidence came in that dinosaurs and pterosaurs both were in fact warm-blooded, he started writing lies into the textbooks. When it was found that Archaeopteryx existed and was a predicted transition between dinosaurs and birds, he deliberately misrepresented Archaeopteryx by writing an article that was comparing pterosaurs to Archaeopteryx. That's a completely different lineage. Nobody thought that pterosaurs and birds were. It's like saying that birds are related to bats because they both fly. That's how far apart these things are.
Yeah. Yeah, I liked seeing his old versions of the dinosaurs. How they're all the two ones he made were look totally different than the ones we know they look like now.
I fulfilled a bucket list item when I was a little kid. I remember being somewhere between 8 and 11 years old and looking at the pictures of Crystal Palace Park and the dinosaurs that Sir Richard Owen had commissioned to be constructed there. And I thought, I'm never going to be able to see these with my own eyes because, nobody in my family had a passport. Nobody ever leaves North America. Nobody ever leaves the Western states because my family was just very tribal and insular. But at one point, not just one point, more than once, as an adult, I finally made it to Crystal Palace Park. And the first time that I did, I waded through the water to get to that island so that I could have my picture taken with the what was it? Not Megalodon, not Megatherium. There was the Iguanodon.
Yeah.
And
Megalosaur.
Yeah, maybe it was Megalosaurus. But the rendition of that, if you look at what we understand it to be now, right? This is a bipedal theropod, but he made it look more like a bear crawling around on all fours.
Which makes me remember when they did those. They tried to make the sauropod with the flying dinosaurs.
Yeah, and I remember when, as a kid, all the dinosaur books that I read as a kid talked about how dinosaurs were slow-moving, lethargic, cold-blooded reptiles that couldn't support their body weight unless they were in the water and everything. And the funny thing is, the books that I was reading at the time, that were written in the 50s and 60s, those had already been disputed 100 years earlier.
Yeah, I remember it's still in the 80s. I reading books about dinosaurs, the big sauropods that lived in the water. I remember that from the 80s, and
Yep.
I did not know that the what's it called the avarice hypothesis or theory happened in the 90s. I thought that was always a thing. I didn't know that was a thing that happened 10 years after I was born.
Have you done any have you been on a paleo expedition? Have you done any kind of field science at all?
I have not.
It that is a fun thing to do. It's a if you ever get the opportunity to do it. I've only ever been able to do it a couple of times for serious expeditions. You know, we actually do the camping out there. But I've only been able to do that twice. But look into it if you're interested in paleontology at all. Try to do that. There are paleontological groups that'll take you out on day trips
Hmm.
for this or that, and those are rewarding too. Because I've seen on day trips, I've seen some amazing things actually.
I'll look see if there's any in my area. Or I can make a plan a trip. So I'm guessing you have to go soon.
I do. I've
Right.
got a bunch of things pending right soon.
Anything you want to plug before you go?
Ah, well, I have been I've been doing this full time for a bit, and unfortunately, I need all the help I can get. So if you're able to support me on Patreon, my activism, I do all that I can to try to fight back religious encroachments against our history, against science, against secularism, and all of that. So please check out patreon.com/ARONRA. Or
Links are
on
out.
any of my videos, you should be able to find links where you
Yeah,
can make a PayPal donation or a Patreon link.
yeah. His
And I
Patreon
really
link.
do need all the help I can get. I'm dirt ass poor.
Yeah, his Patreon link is down below. If you're watching want to click and support him, feel free to. And if you ever want to mirror this video or break it up into pieces, feel free to. I'll give you permission. YouTube permissions, no copyright strike. If you want to mirror this in the future.
Thank you kindly.
Right. So you have like a catchphrase you say at the end of your videos?
I do not. I do not. I usually make some ridiculous dad joke whenever I can figure out one that would be appropriate.
Right. Well, for my catchphrase is never stop learning and enjoy the randomness. We'll see you next time. Bye.